Midnight Eastern Time, which makes this Friday, which makes the proper greeting good morning from our NBC News headquarters here in New York. It's now the start of day 1058 of this Trump administration here on the East Coast, the final Friday 13th of the decade. Look at it that way. The breaking news this hour, a surprise, sudden end to the House Judiciary Committee marathon debate on the articles of impeachment against President Donald Trump. The committee wrapped up suddenly, just a short time ago, without taking the vote that would have sent the articles to the House floor. The chairman, Jerry Nadler of New York, choosing to speak with his gavel.
It has been a long 2 days of consideration of these articles, and it is now very late at night. I want the members on both sides of the aisle to think about what has happened over these last 2 days and to search their consciences before we cast our final votes. Therefore, the committee will now stand in recess until tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., at which point I will move to divide the question so that each of us may have the opportunity to cast up or down votes on each of the articles of impeachment, and to let history be our judge. The committee is in recess.
Chairman.
To stress here, it was a surprise. The verbal reaction you heard in the moment seemed genuine. While the chairman had the certain right to do what he did violate rules of common courtesy between the parties on the committee. Republicans then proceeded to blast Nadler for the late night surprise.
Chairman Nadler just did, and his staff, and the rest of the majority who sat there quietly and said nothing. This is why they don't like us, because they know it's all about games. They know it's all about these TV screens. It's all about getting at a president because they want the prime time hit. This is Speaker Pelosi and Adam Schiff and the others directing this committee. I don't have a chairman anymore. I guess I just need to go straight to Ms. Pelosi and say, what TV hit does this committee need to do? Because this committee has lost all relevance. I'll see y'all tomorrow.
That came after, by the way, Congressman Collins said he was at a loss for words. The debate began with its first session yesterday evening, continued through the day today and into the night. Republicans offered up a series of amendments that they knew would be voted down along party lines. The day was also filled with some fierce sparring between Democrats and Republicans over the charges against the president.
The entire argument for impeachment in this case is based on a charge that is not a crime, much less a high crime, and that has never been approved by the House of Representatives in a presidential impeachment before, ever in history.
There are no crimes here. That is the defense my colleagues across the aisle are putting forward. The president committed the highest crime against the Constitution by abusing his office.
The president had offered to give military aid if he got an investigation against his political rival, and his political rival happened to be Joe Biden, and he knew that was, in fact, conspicuously using public office and public money for public and private desires.
Democrats have not afforded this president basic procedure protections, such as the right to see all the evidence, the right to call witnesses, or the right to have counsel at hearings.
The partisan showdown got personal quickly when Trump ally Matt Gaetz, Republican of Florida, brought up Hunter Biden's job with the Ukrainian gas company Burisma and his history of substance abuse.
And I don't want to make light of anybody's substance abuse issues. I know the president's working real hard to solve those throughout the country, but it's a little hard to believe that Burisma hired Hunter Biden to resolve their international disputes when he could not resolve his own dispute with Hertz rental car over leaving cocaine and a crack pipe in the car.
That was enough for one Democratic committee member who pointed out Gaetz's own past arrest for DUI, which then brought a plea for the panel to stay focused on the business at hand.
I would say that the pot calling the kettle black is not something that we should do. I don't know what members, if any, have had any problems with substance abuse, been busted in DUI. I don't know. But if I did, I wouldn't raise it against anyone on this committee.
There are issues for the election, and then there are issues for this committee. The behavior of Vice President Biden's son, and frankly, the behavior of President Trump's two sons and daughter may be discussed in the election. But here, we're talking about the abuse of presidential authority.
For the record there, again, Congressman Johnson was referring to Matt Gaetz, his arrest 11 years ago in Florida, indeed for a DUI. Even during a break in today's hearing, Republicans maintained their defense of President Trump, particularly the president's claim that his actions stemmed from concerns about corruption in Ukraine and not his political rival.
So is it the position of the Republicans that the president did not ask for an investigation to the Bidens?
This goes back to the whole issue of what the president has felt all along, that corruption in the Ukraine was a problem, and that's where he's been.
He didn't say corruption in the call, and he asked for an investigation.
But again, we've also, it goes back to an issue here where you look. He didn't say Bill Biden in the call, because what we just came out of was.
So it's still your contention, even though he didn't bring up corruption in either of these calls, that corruption is actually what he was focused on and not Joe Biden?
It has been. There's nothing to change here because that's the facts. Travis,
do you wish the president hadn't brought up Joe Biden?
I think the protocol call is fine as it is.
So you heard him there. The president's concern has been corruption all along. While all this was going on, the president was unleashing an avalanche on Twitter. Well over 100 different social media posts, including this one, which seemed to hint at the basis for a future defense, more of a look over their defense. Why aren't Germany, France, and other European countries helping Ukraine more? They are the biggest beneficiaries. Why is it always the good old United States? The radical left, do-nothing Democrats never mention this at their phony hearing. In all, 31 House Democrats represent districts that Trump won in 2016. There are now increasing signs that Republicans are taking aim at them with a pro-Trump ad campaign.
The verdict is in. A rigged process, a sham impeachment, no quid pro quo. But Pelosi's witch hunt continues. One Democrat congressman called it hopelessly partisan. Another, like something you would see in third world nations. Your money wasted, your priorities ignored.
Indeed, NBC News is reporting that House Democrats are now actively trying to convince vulnerable Democrats to come over onto their side to oppose the impeachment articles. According to one source, Republicans are focusing on upwards of 8 Democrats who have indicated they may be undecided. Earlier today, Speaker Pelosi was asked what she is telling members of her Democratic caucus.
I have no message to them. We are not whipping this legislation, nor do we ever whip something like this. People have to come to their own conclusions. They've seen the facts as presented at in the Intelligence Committee. They've seen the Constitution as they know it. They take an oath to protect and defend it, but they see the constitutional experts speak about it. They'll make their own decisions. I don't say anything to them.
The White House is now looking ahead to the inevitability of a Senate trial. Today, White House counsel Pat Cipollone met with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell on Capitol Hill. Earlier tonight, McConnell spoke about strategizing with the administration.
Everything I do during this, I'm coordinating with White House counsel. There will be no difference between the president's position and our position, but we'll be working through this process, hopefully in a fairly short period of time. There's no chance the president's going to be removed from office. My hope is that there won't be a single Republican who votes for either of these articles of impeachment. And, Sean, it wouldn't surprise me if we got 1 or 2 Democrats. This is a really weak case, and that's why I think you're going to see bipartisan opposition to the articles over in the House.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.